Hello, and welcome back to This Month on the Railroad, my monthly train news series. This episode is for March of 2022, which was one of the first episodes that I struggled to find interesting news for. Of course, that doesn't mean that there isn't any news, but this episode is going to be slightly less packed than previous ones, so it might be a little shorter than usual. Anyways, with that said, let's begin. On the 2nd of March, Mid-America Car of Kansas City, Missouri announced that they had completed the restoration of former Santa Fe ST45-2, number 5704, into its original bicentennial commemorative paint scheme. This locomotive was acquired by the Southern California Railway Museum last year, and since then it's been undergoing cosmetic restoration. On the 2nd, Mid-America Car announced the completion of this restoration, adding that the locomotive would stay in Kansas City until the early summer, when it'll make the trip west to California to receive a mechanical restoration at the Southern California Railway Museum. The next day, the Newburgh and South Shore Railroad purchased a battery-converted GP9 locomotive, which was funded by an Ohio Environmental Protection Agency grant, making the Newburgh and South Shore the first railroad in Ohio to operate a battery-powered locomotive. Around the same time, former Norfolk Southern AC44C6CF, which is the only of its kind, made a return to service as a leased locomotive on CN under the reporting mark KLWX. After finding itself in storage on Norfolk Southern a few years ago due to seemingly endless mechanical issues, it was sold off to the Knoxville Locomotive Works and its reliability issues were sorted out. After briefly operating on a short line railroad in North Carolina, 8520 has been put into mainline freight service as it was always intended to. Only time will tell how long this thing will last on CN before it's returned to Knoxville Locomotive Works, and its long-term future remains uncertain, but being used as a leaser is certainly better than nothing. On the 11th, Amtrak received $31.8 billion in federal funding to begin operating a second daily round trip between Chicago and St. Paul, Minnesota. Currently, the only train that serves this surprisingly heavily traveled route is the long-distance Empire Builder, but beginning in 2024, a brand new route which has yet to be named will operate between the Twin Cities and Chicago, not only benefiting these two cities but also Milwaukee and countless other communities between the two terminals. Almost a week later, on the 17th, locomotive manufacturer Wabtec, which recently took over General Electric's operations in Erie, Pennsylvania, donated GE AC6000 demonstrator unit number 6002 to the Lakeshore Railway Museum in Northeast Pennsylvania. This 90s time capsule is a historic reminder of General Motors and General Electric's superpower battle of the 1990s, in which their high-powered SD90 Mac and AC60CW locomotives duked it out on the rails to see which locomotive was a more reliable workhorse. Ultimately, both locomotives were found to be quite unreliable, leading to their eventual replacement, but regardless, it's pretty cool to see that this interesting period of American locomotive design will live on for future generations to enjoy. On the 20th, Hitachi Rail announced their plans to build a brand new railroad equipment manufacturing plant in Hagerstown, Maryland, where in 2024 they'll begin to produce up to 800 new 8000 series Metro cars for Washington, D.C. As per the Buy America Act, federal agencies such as state-funded railroads must purchase things, i.e. trains, produced in the U.S. The next day, the MBTA celebrated the grand opening of its brand new Green Line extension to Union Square in Somerville, Massachusetts. For years now, a Green Line extension has been in the works, and finally that plan has been realized as now trains operate on a brand new elevated line between Science Park and Union Square. While this is all fine and dandy, the tease work isn't done yet, as this summer a second Green Line extension will be opened, with this one going to Medford. Definitely big news, especially for such an old and traditionally outdated network such as the MBTA. 2 days later, rail equipment manufacturer Brookville revealed photos of the first of 5 Liberty NXT light rail cars ordered by Seattle's Sound Transit for the new Tacoma Link expansion opening next year. This first car will soon be delivered to Seattle, where it'll begin testing on the existing light rail line. On the same day, Wabtec announced its plans to overhaul an additional 330-9 locomotives on Norfolk Southern from C44-9W to AC44C6M specifications between now and 2025, when a total of 950-9s will have been rebuilt over the course of 10 years. That'll leave only a small handful of -9s remaining, which I'm sure will be rebuilt soon after. Although Wabtec and Norfolk Southern claim that this will give them the largest modernized fleet in North America, I think it'll also continue their recent tradition of having the most boring locomotive fleet in North America too. Once again, this is something that's good for the railroad, but not necessarily for rail fans. On the 25th, MBTA PCC car number 3265 entered service on the Mattapan high-speed line after being rebuilt for over 4 years. This car was originally intended to re-enter service in 2019, and now, 3 years later, it's finally being put back into regular service in Mattapan. 3265 received minor upgrades but a comprehensive refurbishment, replacing almost everything with more modern parts, including modern Brookville trucks for a smoother ride. The MBTA claims that a second refurbished PCC will join 3265 this summer, but judging by how this car entered service 3 years after it was intended to, this should be taken with a grain of salt. No matter what, it's nice to see that these PCC cars will continue to serve the citizens of Boston, providing reliable service for 80 years and counting. Continuing with MBTA news, on the 29th, a video surfaced of MBTA F40 number 1062, now rebuilt as an F40PH-3C by Wabtec in Erie, Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, this locomotive no longer wears the MassDOT blue paint from when it was a F40PH-2C, and chances are its twin, 1056, which is currently in the shop at Wabtec, won't wear this cool paint scheme anymore either. Luckily, as I talked about last month, MBTA 1137 was repainted into a similar MassDOT blue paint scheme, but there's something about this paint on an F40 that looks really special. Finally, the last bit of news from the month came from Wabtec once again, who released a brand new freight locomotive known as the ES44ACI, which is intended to be a more fuel-efficient version of the ES44AC, creating the same 4,400 horsepower with 4 less cylinders. Hopefully, this new 12-cylinder GEVO will be just as reliable as its 16-cylinder counterpart, but if history repeats itself, it probably won't be, as this is exactly what EMD tried to do with their SD50 locomotive 40 years ago and it didn't go well. Still, 25 of these locomotives have already been ordered by 3 separate Brazilian railroads, so the ES44ACI is already off to a great start in foreign markets. Well, that's March. Not a very news-packed month, unfortunately. Still, what isn't unfortunate is that I plan to upload High Speed Rail Week 2 later this month, which is coming along really well. Once again, this date is subject to change because anything can happen, but as this series gets closer and closer to completion, the planned upload dates will become more and more accurate. Anyways, hopefully the next video I'll see you in is the first episode of High Speed Rail Week, but if that doesn't end up happening by the end of April, I'll see you in just about a month for the next episode of This Month on the Railroad.